Good morning, everyone. Sorry for the delay. One last sip of coffee, and we're going to jump into this. I'm going to fully confess, for anyone who's done any type of public speaking, you always get that ball of energy right leading up to it. And my favorite way to get rid of that is to have a little dance party. And I might have overdone it. I'm a little out of breath, so we're gonna take a moment, gather ourselves. But welcome to my home. I didn't want to do this in my office where it'd be super stuffy, so because what I want from this webinar is to create sort of a truly transformational experience. My goal for everyone who is here with me live today, and for those of you watching this replayed later, I want us to be able to walk away with some actionable tools that you can start applying today to think differently about both yourself, about how you're perceiving situations, and your ability to achieve the goals that you have. Very, very important that we recognize the invisible force that's holding us back. And I want to first get out of the way the, in my opinion, the least important part of today, which is this. Who am I? Who am I to be talking about this? Who am I to be giving you the information and the tools and the transformation that I hope you pull out today? And it's simply this. My name is Alex McBrady. I've been a fitness coach for 12 years, been running my company 18 Fitness for almost 11. It will be 11 in July. I have a background, a degree in psychology, primarily focused on mindset and motivation. And I had my own personal transformation of nearly 100 pounds loss over the course of 15 months. And in that, I discovered a very key difference that allowed me to not only make that transformation, but to continue to live that lifestyle for now over 16 years. And that is how I thought about myself. That is the mindset that I had. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. This mindset, this invisible force. Couple of housekeeping things. A member of my team, the awesome Mikhail, is going to be moderating the chat. So as we're going today, I'm going to be asking you to help and participate in some of these activities for your benefit. So if you happen to have pen and paper next to you, that would be amazing for a few of those activities. But if you have questions as we go, my encouragement to you is to pop them in the chat. At the end of today, I probably have enough time to answer one of the two of those live here on camera, but I want to make sure that I answer all of your questions in follow-up emails after today. So as we go, feel free to pop those in the chat. We have an assortment of people here with us, again, both live and watching this replay. We have individuals who might find that they're doing everything they can to achieve their own personal health goals, and for whatever reason, they're feeling stuck. They're feeling trapped. We have people here today that might have big career ambitions. Maybe they want to grow their business, they want to advance in their career, and they feel stuck. They feel like they're doing everything correctly, but they're being overlooked for the promotions. They're not seeing the growth in the areas that they would like to see growth, and they can't figure out why. And we also have individuals here who are coaches, fellow coaches, who might be working with clients, and it seems like no matter what you do, they keep spinning their wheels. You feel like you can't get through to them. If you're in either of these three categories, you're in a good spot because everything we talk about today can be applied to all of these different scenarios. So my recommendation for you to get the most out of this is to figure out which of those categories you're in right now, and it could be multiple, and use that framework, that context to sort of apply everything that we talk about today. Before we start jumping in though, one last thing, mindset. Mindset is what we're talking about, but mindset has a lot of different ideas around it, different preconceptions about what mindset is. On the one hand, it's very woo-woo. It's very like, what does that even mean? What difference does that make? On the other hand, very scientific, very practical, the chemical reactions in our brain. So what I encourage you all to do right now is think about when you think of the word mindset, what is the first thing that comes to mind? And then do me a favor, pop that in the chat. What is the first thing that comes to mind when you think of mindset? No right or wrong answers here. Just go ahead and pop that in. And while you're doing that, we're going to go ahead and ask the most important question today, which is of everything that we talk about, of who I am, who am I to be sharing this information, of what mindset means to us, of how it can benefit us in the future, why the hell should you care in the first place? Why are you here today? And that is the thing about mindset. I want to empower you to consider whatever your preconceptions are about mindset, to think about mindset as a lens. And this lens is going to filter every experience you have in life. the thoughts you have about yourself, the experiences you have as you interact with the world around you. And this lens is going to impact how you feel about all of those experiences. So if our mindset steers a little bit more negative or self-deprecating, then every experience that we have, good or bad, is going to be perceived more negatively. And conversely, if the lens that we're using is a little bit brighter, a little bit clearer, a little bit more positive, then every experience, again, good or bad, even our bad experiences, will be a little bit better, not so bad. And so what I want to do, the transformation I hope for you today, is we're going to first evaluate what lens might we be wearing right now. Do you get very clear on that aspect? And if we're wearing a lens that's not serving us, if it's blurring our vision a little bit, what can we start doing to change that lens? And if we walk away with that, then today will have been a success. When I was 16, I finally gave in and decided that I needed to get glasses. As a high school student in the early 2000s, the last thing I wanted was to be walking around wearing glasses. It wasn't the cool thing, right? So I put it off for years and years. And it wasn't until I was sitting in biology class, I was in the second row, and the teacher had one of the overhead projectors, which I don't even think they use anymore, with the translucent paper that they would write on with the dry erase marker. Some of us remember that. And it would project largely on the screen. It's probably all digital now. But our teacher gave us a fill-in-the-blank worksheet, and she had an identical copy that she put on the overhead projector. And the goal was we would go through it together, and we would have to shout out the blank words to fill in what was happening. And it was in this moment that I realized that I had to sit there and listen intently in order to hear the correct words to fill into my worksheet, because I couldn't see them on the wall. That's how bad my eyes had gotten. I couldn't make out what the words were that she was writing. And so I went to the eye doctor, I got measured, I did in fact need glasses, I got a new prescription, and I'll never forget walking out of the eye doctor's office with that new prescription glasses for the first time, putting them on, and how differently the world looked. For the first time in years, I could see things clearly. I could see the subtle differences in facial features of the people around me. I could see every individual blade of grass on the ground, whereas before it was just a patch of green. But it wasn't until I had the correct lens that I could see clearly the world around me. And that's the metaphor that I want to stick with today, which is our mindset being that lens. When we have it clear, it serves us better because we can see the world around us more clearly. And whatever goals that we're trying to achieve and whatever aspirations we desire, when we have a clear mindset lens, everything gets easier. But if we don't have a clear lens, then we're struggling with negative thoughts, limiting beliefs. And it's important that we understand what these things are before we can figure out A, how to recognize them and how to start shifting them. So first, what is negative thinking, or what are negative thoughts? Negative thoughts are interpretations of events. Here's a key thing to understand. When we are interacting with the world, we are doing so via our senses: sight, sound, taste, smell, touch. In all of those interactions, all of that information that we're gathering from the world around us is entering our brain as raw data. But here's the thing. Data, just for the sake of data, doesn't mean anything. If you look at an Excel spreadsheet of random numbers with no context for what those numbers mean, it's not beneficial. It's not helpful. So we have to make sense of it. And the ways that our brain makes sense of all of this data is by telling stories. We write a story about what is happening. And that means a couple of things. It means that ultimately our experiences are all subjective. That's what this lens dictates. That lens that we wear dictates the story that we write about the world that we're experiencing. So here's an example to help us contextualize this point. Imagine that you walk into a party. You walk into a party by yourself, fashionably late, of course. And as you walk in, you see a group of 2 or 3 individuals across the room, and you see them clearly look at you and then turn to each other and start to whisper. And I want you to imagine how you might feel in that moment. Because there's a couple of different stories that we could write. On the one hand, we could write the story that they're judging us for something. Maybe they're judging that we came to the party by ourselves. Maybe they're judging the outfit that we chose to wear. Maybe they're judging the way that we did our hair or the fact that we showed up by ourselves. And then what is the emotional reaction you would have to that story? Would you feel ashamed? Would you feel embarrassed? Would you feel judged? Would you feel sad? Now imagine that exact same situation. You're walking into a party, fashionably late, by yourself. You see a group of 2 or 3 people across the room. They make eye contact with you, and then they immediately turn and start whispering to each other. But this time, they're not judging you. This time, one of them really liked the shoes you had on, and they turned to their friend to express how much they loved the shoes you were wearing. If you knew that were true, how would you feel then? Would you feel a little bit more confident? Would you feel maybe inclined to go talk to them? Objectively, the exact same situation, totally different story. And the truth is, in that situation, we had no idea what they were talking about. So the story that we wrote was dictated by the lens that we were wearing at that particular time. If we walked into that party already feeling confident, self-assured, we would probably be more likely to write the story that they liked the shoes that we were wearing, or that it was not even about us. If we were walking in there already a little insecure, already questioning ourselves, we would be more likely to write the story that they were judging us. This mindset lens is a truly powerful, invisible force that is going to dictate everything that happens in your life. And so we need to get a grip on what that is. But to further drive home the point of subjectivity, I want to ask you, what do you see in this photo? Go ahead and type in the chat box what you see in this photo. Because chances are really good, a lot of us see a duck. Chances are also really good that a majority of us see a rabbit. If you were looking at it as a duck, you see obviously the beak and the eye. It's facing to the left of the screen here. If you see a rabbit, that beak becomes the ears. The eye is still the eye, but the face is just the opposite direction. Objectively, the exact same image, 2 very different perceptions. We are constantly writing stories about what's happening in our life to make sense of all of the stimulus we're experiencing. And those stories are dictating our reality. I'm going to tell you a story about the beginnings of my career. This was, Alex, 10 years ago. Yes, I was rocking the European soccer player look. It was not a good choice. I started my career 12 years ago in a commercial gym. And there was another trainer there, older woman, at the time in her 60s. Her name was Mary. She was a wonderful woman. We had fantastic conversations over the course of the year that I worked there. And after a year, I left to start my company. And she wished me well. She wished me all the luck in the world, and she hoped I was going to be successful. But then she said something to me that made me stop in my tracks. And she said, Alex, it's a good thing that you're young and single, because I could never imagine providing for a family on a personal trainer salary. Now, Mary was a busy trainer. She trained a lot of the older clientele at this particular gym, but she relied financially on her husband's engineering salary. And her belief was that working in the fitness industry was not a lucrative career, that you just couldn't do it without the support of a spouse. And I'm really glad that I didn't share that belief, because I may not have left to start my company. And in July, we're going to celebrate 11 years in business because I didn't share the belief that she shared. Mary stayed at that gym until she retired in 2021 after the COVID pandemic. And that was perfect for her. That's exactly what she wanted. Happy for her. But that wasn't what I wanted. And that wasn't the belief that I held. We have to be careful what beliefs we hold. because they are going to decide our future more than anything else. And now our beliefs are a little bit different than our thoughts. Thoughts are momentary interpretations of a singular event, and beliefs are the conclusions that we draw as a result of those thoughts or repeated patterns of thoughts. We're going to play a game. So if you happen to have pen and paper next to you, what I encourage you to do is take it out and draw 9 dots in a square formation just like this that you see on the screen. The rules of this game are simple. We are trying to connect all 9 dots, but there's some rules involved. Those rules are, we're going to use only 4 straight lines that have to be connected. Each line has to be connected to the one before it. In other words, try to connect all 9 dots using 4 straight lines without picking your pen or pencil off the paper. Can you do this? Give it a shot. Give everyone a moment to try that. So we're going to connect all 9 dots using only 4 straight lines so they can't be curved. And once you put your pen on the paper, you cannot pick it up. So every line is connected to the one before it. If you're like me, this is going to be easy. No problem. Go around. Most basically, damn it, I missed the one in the middle. Got my 4 lines, all straight. Missed one of those dots. No problem. If you're like me, if you just gave it a shot and you didn't get all 9 dots, then that's all right. Go ahead and draw 9 more dots. We're going to try this again. Here's the thing about this puzzle. It's not just a game. It is more than that, because these dots represent all of the goals and aspirations you have in your life. It could be your health. One of these dots could be your career. One of these dots could be family. It could be your marriage. It could be your kids. It could be travel. It could be a hobby. All of these dots represent something that you are trying to achieve. And so we try again. We try to get all of our goals. I did even worse the second time. Clearly, I learned nothing from the first time. Right? This time I missed 2 dots. All of those dots are our goals. The lines represent the unbreakable rules that we have to follow in order to accomplish all of the goals that we want in all of the different aspects of our life. Unbreakable rules mean laws of physics. If we want to lose weight, we know we need to be in calorie deficit. There is no way around that. That is an unbreakable rule. Unless we're in outer space, gravity is an unbreakable rule. Laws, in my opinion, are unbreakable rules. You don't want to break any laws in order to achieve the goals that you have for yourself. So there are some boundaries that we have to follow. So let's try again. If you still haven't done it yet, let's try again. Let's draw 9 more dots, give it another shot, try a different path. The dots, though, represent the goals that we have, and those lines represent the rules that we have to follow in order to achieve them, the unbreakable rules. And here's the thing, we might try and try and try to achieve our goals. We try different strategies, we try to do different things. And we try again, at least I didn't do as bad as my second attempt. I still miss one of those dots. And this is the thing that's most frustrating about trying to achieve all of the things. We're told that we can't have everything, that we have to pick certain things to achieve. That the game is rigged against us because the rules don't allow us to succeed. Within the limitations of those unbreakable rules, we're not able to achieve all the things. So what do we have to sacrifice, is what we're told. And it's frustrating because we try different strategies. We try to solve this puzzle over and over again. How do we achieve all of these things and make it all work? And it just doesn't happen. Here's the thing. We're going to try this one more time. Here's the thing about this, the unbreakable rules. If you're like me on your first attempt, maybe you did differently. I drew the box around the edges. Your lines probably stayed within the boundaries of that square. But that was never a rule. The only rules were it had to be 4 straight lines that were connected because you didn't pick your pen up off the paper. There was never an explicit rule that it had to stay within the boundaries of the square. That was one you made up. That was an imaginary limitation that we created. So try this puzzle again, and the clue is your lines can extend beyond the square, the boundaries of that square. They can go as far away from the puzzle as you want. 4 straight lines, connected because we are not picking our pen up off the paper, but they can extend beyond. When we recognize our imaginary limitations, our self-limiting beliefs, and we challenge them, then we're able to successfully connect all 9 dots, even within the unbreakable rules that we're given. We can achieve all of the goals that we have. We can meet all of our aspirations, even within the rules. And the reason we struggle is because we are creating limitations that don't exist because of the mindset lens that we're wearing. What is a limiting belief? This is an equation that we can actually break down what a limiting belief is, and it has 2 parts. The first is a negative thought, that negative interpretation of an event around us. The second part is a perceived barrier. A perceived barrier could be money, it could be time, it could be knowledge, it could be access, connection. Negative thoughts are internal. Self-confidence, self-efficacy, self-worth. So a limiting belief is an internal negative perception or negative thought, plus an external perceived barrier. That structure is going to be important later when we talk about our vision score and our mindset prescription, is there's an internal and an external component. Together create a limiting belief. These are informed by past experiences. They're informed by our insecurities. When we have a limiting belief, it's because we're having a negative thought about our abilities and ourself and a perceived barrier that we don't think we can overcome. So what are some examples? Some examples of limiting beliefs, again, you can fill in the blank for yourself, is I'll never succeed at weight loss because I don't have time for the gym. I'll never achieve my business growth because I don't have the skills to run a business. Every limiting belief we hold is a negative thought about ourselves plus a perceived barrier. Now, for whatever context you're joining us from, whether it's health, career, or coaching, my recommendation is on that piece of paper you have next to you, take a moment using this structure. A limiting belief is a negative thought plus a perceived barrier. Take a moment to write down one limiting belief that you have right now. And it doesn't have to be within health, career, or coaching. It could be anything that you think you have a limiting belief towards. But it's got to have that structure of a negative thought about you plus a perceived barrier. So I'll never be good at X because of Y. I'll never succeed at X because of Y, et cetera, et cetera. Take a moment, write down one limiting belief you have and keep it close, because that is how we're going to approach being able to evaluate and shift these limiting beliefs. So I'll give us another moment to write down one limiting belief that we have. Because now we're going to talk about how can we begin to challenge and change those limiting beliefs that we have. And today I encourage you to apply everything as we go to the limiting belief that you've written down. But later you can apply these to every limiting belief that you might find that you have. I'm going to show you how to recognize them too. And the way that we can begin shifting our negative beliefs is with what I call the LENS framework. And it's got 4 steps, LENS being the acronym. First is we need to look at our limiting beliefs. We need to know what they are. The second step is we need to evaluate these beliefs, to begin challenging the stories that we're writing. Because remember, these are just stories that we're writing. The third step is we need to neutralize the negative thoughts or the negative thinking. And it's a little unintuitive how we need to do that. And when we go through steps 1 through 3, then we're able to start applying tools, which I'm going to give you some today, to start shifting that perspective and actually start changing those beliefs. Remember, beliefs are conclusions that we've drawn about ourselves and the world because of a repeated pattern of thought. And if a negative thought is a story that we're writing about a singular moment, if we change enough stories about moments, we change the conclusion that we have. That's what we're going to do today. But we're going to start by looking at our limiting beliefs. So I sent everyone out. I know many of us joined last minute, so you may not have gotten the link. There's a quiz that I have. I'm going to have our moderator, Mikhail, pop that link in the chat below. But please don't go take that quiz now. I want you to stay locked in with me here in the moment. You can take it afterwards. And what this quiz is it's going to measure your current mindset prescription, the lens that you're operating from. It's a very short quiz. And in that, it's going to give us our prescription. It's going to have two numbers, just like you would at the eye doctor, 20, 20, 100, 100. We'll see that in a moment. And from the results of this quiz, which I will send to you after you've taken it, again, not now, stay locked in with me here. You're going to get a prescription score and you're going to fit into one of 4 archetypes that I've established from seeing the practice of this with people that I help. Now, these are your prescription can fall anywhere between 20 and 100 in these categories. I've just listed the extremes here for example sakes of the different archetypes and how we fit into them. But very quickly on this number, you see 2 numbers here, 100, 100 for a doubter, 2100 for striver, et cetera, et cetera. That first number represents our internal mindset score. Remember, a limiting belief, negative thought about self plus perceived barrier, 2 parts, internal, external. The first number is our internal score. What is the mindset lens we hold for ourselves? How clear is it versus how blurry? The second number is that external score. How well do we perceive the world around us? If we have incredibly blurry mindset, 100, 100, the highest score we can get here. Legally mindset blind in this case. That category we're going to fit it to is a doubter. A doubter. Now, what is a doubter? A doubter is someone who constantly questions themselves, questions their self-worth, questions their abilities. But they also second guess all of the choices that they make. They're writing faulty stories about the world around them. A doubter is the person most likely to walk into that party fashionably late, see the people across the room snickering, and assume that it's something negative about them. Constantly in doubt. If we fall into this category, we absolutely want to do the work to shift it. If we fall into a doubter category where we're both blurry internally and externally, my one advice to you, as we apply all of the tools that we're about to get into, that can be applied both to our internal mindset and our external mindset individually, start with the internal first. When we can start to improve the clarity of our internal mindset lens, it becomes significantly easier to improve the external component. So that's my advice if we find that we're into a doubter. A striver might have a really clear lens internally. They're confident in their own abilities, but they fall prey to the stories they write about their external world. These are the people that might succumb to the weight of expectation, the pressure of perfectionism. A striver is someone who has skills and know that they're good at something, but they struggle to integrate that with the world around them. Those barriers that they come up against. A reflector is the opposite. A reflector might read situations really well. They might be incredibly resourceful. They might be really good at connecting and communicating with others to help get where they need to go. But they constantly struggle with that internal lens, questioning their choices, questioning their self-worth. So a reflector has a clear external lens, but a very blurry internal lens. And ultimately, what we want to achieve with the work that we do today, whether we're applying it to our internal lens or our external lens, is to achieve perfect clarity as an achiever. And an achiever is the person that's taking aligned action. They are confident in who they are and in their abilities. They can read situations well. They're resourceful. They can overcome the perceived barriers that they identify. They can leverage tools effectively to achieve their goals. As we do the work to challenge and shift the mindset lens that we have, regardless of what our current prescription is, we ultimately want to achieve that perfect clarity. And so again, when you take that quiz, I'll be able to send you your results to actually know where in these categories, and then that will best inform how to begin applying all of the tools that I give you the remainder today, all in an effort to become an achiever. So step one is recognizing where our limiting beliefs are. Do we need to focus on improving our internal mindset lens, our external mindset lens, or both? Once we know that, then we need to start evaluating the limiting beliefs that we currently hold. My favorite tool to do that, this is one of the most actionable things I'm going to give you today. It can be applied to our internal lens, it can be applied to our external lens, is Socratic questioning. This is a tool pulled from CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, named after, of course, the Greek philosopher Socrates, who was famous even still today for annoyingly asking why. Why, why, why? Why do we do things the way that we do? Which is seldom a question often we ask. And it's 5 questions we can use to evaluate the stories that we're writing, the beliefs that we hold. The first question, what is the evidence that the thought we're having is true? You're at the party, you see the 2 or 3 people across the room, make eye contact, begin to talk to each other. You immediately think they're judging you. What evidence is there that that's true? Is it because they looked at you before they started talking to each other? Is it because they look like they're snickering or they're doing something? What is the evidence? And what this does is it starts to cause us to reflect on the story that we're writing, to not just take it at face value, but to actually start thinking about, what are the stories that I'm writing? Where's the evidence for this? That's question 1. Question 2, if you're wrong, if the story that you've written, the interpretation that you've had is wrong, what is a different way to look at that situation? This question starts to force us to evaluate the subjectivity of our thoughts. What are alternative stories? Sure, those people might be judging me, but maybe they're complimenting me. Maybe they're not even talking about me. What are alternative stories that we can write? What's a different way to look at this situation? Question 3, if you're correct, if your initial interpretation, your initial story is correct, what can you do about the situation? And what this question does is it starts to push us into a solution-focused frame of mind. What can we do to rectify this situation? Should I go over and talk to the people that I think are talking about me? And maybe I'll get more information on whether they were judging me or not. Maybe they're incredibly nice people and they were just complimenting me. Should I go over there? Maybe I can leave the party. Maybe that's just clearly not the place for me. I'm already over it. Can I go on the other side of the room and talk to somebody else and forget that it ever happened? So if you're right, what can you do about the situation? The 4th question, and my personal favorite, what advice would you give to a friend in the exact same situation? Because here's the thing, when we're engaging with the world, when we're experiencing all of these things, we're clouded by emotion. Our emotional brain and our rational, logical brain cannot operate at the same time. This is why we give great advice to our friends, and why it's so much more difficult to take that same advice for ourselves. Because when we're giving advice to a friend, we've created emotional distance. We're not actively engaged in an emotional reaction to that situation. We can think from our rational, logical brain. On the other hand, when we're experiencing the situation, we have to deal with our emotional reaction, and that clouds our decision making. We can't think clearly. So by asking this question, what advice would you give to a friend in the same situation? It helps you create the emotional distance to move from an emotional brain to a rational one. And then our last question, what should you do now? And this pushes us towards action. So these 5 questions can be applied towards every negative thought, story, limiting belief that we might experience as we're going through the world, to begin evaluating and challenging the conclusions that we're drawing. It's incredibly effective. But it does take practice. These are not changes that happen overnight. You can't just do this once and immediately you have perfect clarity with your mindset lens. It's a practice that needs to be consistent, and we'll see why in a moment specifically. But these are 5 powerful questions that you can use. And you can start using them today. Once we recognize what our limiting beliefs are, what mindset archetype we fall into, what our vision score is, and where our limiting beliefs exist. Once we have the tool and we have the practice to start challenging and evaluating what those limiting beliefs are, now we have to neutralize our negative thoughts, our negative reactions. But this isn't as simple as it sounds. We can't stop having negative thoughts by just stop thinking negative things. I want to share a story with you. When I was 7 or 8, I snuck a viewing of the movie Psycho for the first time. Psycho, the old 60s Hitchcock movie, very famous. And I remember watching the first shower scene, the murder scene. Traumatized me for months. No way I should have been watching that movie. And I remember laying awake at night, trying to fall asleep, laying in my dark room and trying to tell myself not to think scary thoughts so that I could stand a chance of falling asleep. But what happened when I tried to avoid having scary thoughts? Suddenly, the pile of clothes in the corner became a dark figure watching over me. The wind against the window on the outside was suddenly something trying to get in. The crack in the closet door became a portal that monsters could enter to get me. And the more I tried to avoid having those thoughts, the more I had them. And this is the thing with negative thoughts. We can't just stop having them by telling ourselves not to have them. That's not how the brain works. Interestingly, though, I stumbled upon, accidentally, the solution for this. We can't stop having negative thoughts by just telling ourselves not to have negative thoughts. Because in so doing, our brain flags the thing we're trying to avoid and scans our environment for anything that resembles that. And in doing the job correctly, anything that resembles that which we're trying to avoid gets flagged. And that's what causes us to think about the thing we're trying to avoid. To help you experience this, in a moment, I want you to try your very best to not think about a shark. Give it a shot. Chances are good that for the first couple seconds of that exercise, you probably did a good job of not thinking about a shark. Some of us maybe immediately we just thought about a shark. Like we were saying no chance. But even for those of us who maybe were able to push it off a little bit, chances are really high that as soon as this picture came on screen, probably triggered you to think about a shark. But there are no sharks in this photo. There are things that make us think of sharks. It's underwater. It's coral reef, so probably tropical waters. There's other aquatic animals in this photo, but there are no sharks. When we tell ourselves not to think about something, our brain flags that thing we're trying to avoid, in this case, a shark. Scans our environment for anything that resembles that which we're trying to avoid. So in looking at this photo, even though there's no shark, it makes us think of a shark. Laying in that dark room as a 7-year-old boy, trying not to have nightmares, trying not to think of scary things, made me see scary things in my world, in my room. Everything became scary. The clothes became a figure. The wind became something trying to get in. The closet crack became a portal. This is why we can't just stop having negative thoughts by telling ourselves not to have negative thoughts. This is why we can't improve our diet by just telling ourselves we're not going to eat junk food. Because when we do that, it becomes more present and more prevalent. So if that's true, what the hell, Alex? How do we actually stop? How do we shift this? And the key is we have to override our negative thoughts with different ones. We have to override our negative thoughts with different ones, more positive ones. If we want to change the stories, we have to write different stories. We can't just stop writing the ones that we have. If we want to get rid of limiting beliefs, we have to introduce different beliefs. But now that we know that, we've identified our limiting beliefs. We know which archetype we fit into, or we will shortly after this when we take the quiz. We know if we need to apply these tools towards our internal lens or our external lens or both. We have a tool, Socratic questioning, to begin evaluating and challenging those beliefs and those stories. We understand that we can't just stop having those negative thoughts by telling ourselves not to. We have to actively do something new to override them. And that's what leads us into the final step of the lens framework, which is we can begin shifting our perspective. And there are 3 tools that I'm going to give you today to use that. Now, there are obviously a number of different tools that allow us to successfully begin changing our mindset prescription. But the ones I give you today, I've chosen because you can begin applying them immediately. We can get curious. We can embrace mental strength training. And we can leverage the power of the word yet. Let's talk about all these and start clearing up our prescription. The first is we can get curious, and this requires a very brief introduction about the difference between growth versus fixed mindset. I could do an entire masterclass on these concepts alone, so I'm going to keep it very, very short. For those of us unfamiliar, fixed mindset is a mindset archetype that is our traits, skills, and abilities are fixed at birth. So a good way to think of the outcome of a fixed mindset is we believe in natural talent. We're naturally good at things because our skills and our traits are fixed from birth. Individuals who succumb to this mindset tend to stick to things they're naturally good at. They're less likely to try new things. In the context of health career coaching, with our health, we're less likely to try new food plans. We're less likely to change the behavior of our eating. We're less likely to go to a gym that we're unfamiliar with. In our career and our coaching, we're less likely to implement a new system that's going to make our business run better. The other interesting thing about people with fixed mindset is their ultimate goal is performance-based, not performance in the way we think of, performance in that they want to do better than everyone else around them. Because if our traits and our skills are fixed, then everything is an evaluation of who we are. If we're better than others, that raises our ego. If we try a new activity that we're bad at, that hurts our ego. So we stick to things we know we're naturally good at, and we want to outperform everyone around us. Let's contrast that with a growth mindset. Individuals with a growth mindset tend to believe that their skills, traits, and abilities can be improved through practice. These individuals are more likely to try new things because they know that being bad at it is not a reflection on who they are as a person. It just means they haven't given it enough time and attention to improve and get better. Growth mindset individuals are not concerned with performance against others, comparing themselves to others. They only want to do better than the prior version of them. They're focused on a mastery of the activity. Now, why I draw these distinctions and bring up growth versus fixed mindsets, because naturally we want to be in a growth mindset. It opens us up to new opportunities, to expose us to new things. But most importantly, it allows us to ask the question when we face a setback or a failure, what is the lesson that I can pull from this experience to be better next time? Remember, a negative thought is an interpretation, a story that we're writing about an experience that we're having. Enough negative thoughts lined up, negative stories written, leads to a conclusion about us and about the world, which can be self-limiting if we let it. Embracing this growth mindset and asking the question when we have that negative interpretation, what is the lesson that I can pull to do better next time? It turns those negative experiences into something more positive. You're reframing what's happening. And I encourage you to try this now. If you think about the last time you failed at something, the last time you faced a setback, it could be you jumped on a scale and it didn't show what you wanted. It could be you tried a new project or a new event for your business and it didn't go the way you expected. It could be you tried a new strategy with a client and it bombed. Whatever it is, think about that setback. And then in this moment right now, take a moment and ask yourself, what lesson did you learn from that experience that allowed you to do better next time? And then I want you, most importantly, to recognize or think about, how does that feel in your body when you recognize or identify that lesson, and go ahead and write it down too. When you write down the lesson that you learned from that setback, how does that change the way you feel in the moment? Chances are good you feel a little lighter, feel a little bit more hopeful, not so bad. So the first thing we can immediately start doing to begin shifting the stories that we're writing and clear up our mindset lens is to get curious when we face setbacks. What is the lesson that we can learn? That's the first thing we can do. And if we're still writing down the lesson, that's totally fine. Because the second thing we can do, mental strength training. We have a lot of fitness coaches in the audience here. So you guys all know, number one principle when we're trying to build strength and performance in the gym is progressive overload. We know that maintaining muscle in the body and building muscle takes work, takes effort. Body doesn't really want muscle unless it needs muscle. It's not advantageous to hold a bunch of muscle in the body unless it needs to hold on to that. And the way we create that in the gym experience, or the gym environment rather, is progressive overload. It means that once you are able to achieve a certain weight resistance level, if you stay there, you will not get any stronger because your body has no need to. But if you can continue to increase the resistance over time and challenge your body outside of the capabilities that it currently has, it will be forced to improve, to grow muscle, to get stronger, and you'll be able to eventually lift whatever that resistance is. This is progressive overload. This is strength training. Mental strength training is embracing the hardships that we experience as growth opportunities. Every challenging experience we have in life, whether it's a setback in our health journey, whether it's our career growth growing slower than we want, whether it's trying to work with clients and things don't go as well as you hope, all of the could be in our personal life. All of our hardships are exposing us to greater resistance in our life. And if we can reframe that as the progressive overload that we need to get stronger mentally, those setbacks now serve a positive purpose. So our first tool, getting curious, was identifying the lessons from our setbacks to make our failures meaningful and productive. The second tool is a quick cognitive reframe to lighten the hard experiences that we have, to give them purpose, embracing our hardships as growth opportunities, embracing it, the progressive overload of life, allowing us to get better. The last tool is my absolute favorite. It's one word: the power of yet. But before that, I titled the slide Yes and. I don't know if any of us are familiar with improv comedy. Improv comedy is a style of comedy where there is no pre-written material. They don't go up there with jokes already written. It's entirely based on audience participation, and all of the comedic bits are created right there on the spot. The number one rule of improv comedy is you can never stop the plot. Whatever information is given to you, whatever story is being written, you have to keep the story going with yes and. Most of the time when we experience negative thoughts, when we write negative stories about the experiences that we have, we tend to end the story at the moment of discomfort. This project I attempted didn't go the way that I wanted. We stop it there. And that concludes with I'm not good enough. We jump on the scale, we don't see the number we want. We stop it there at that discomfort. We're never going to achieve the goals that we have. We are violating the number one rule of improv comedy, which is we are ending the story at the moment of discomfort. Here's what I want you to try. That limiting belief that you wrote down from earlier, whatever it was, I want you to rephrase it, but now I want you to add the word yet on the end. I'm not seeing weight loss because I don't have time for the gym yet. My business isn't growing the way that I want because I don't have the right knowledge and skills to apply what I need yet. Rewrite your limiting belief, add the word yet, read it back to yourself, and then think about how your body feels when you say that new phrase with the word yet. Just like before, you might feel a little lighter. You might feel a little hopeful. There feels like there's something more to come. When we are having negative thoughts, when we are acknowledging our self-limiting beliefs, when we are writing those stories, the easiest way to start shifting your perspective is just add the word yet to the end. Keep the story going. And you'll be amazed at how different it feels and how less it kills your motivation, how less discouraged you feel in doing so. Keep the story going. We covered our lens framework today. First, we have to look at our limiting beliefs. Again, I recommend as soon as we hop off here, head over to that link that Mikhail popped in the chat, take your quiz. I will get those results sent over to you of what archetype you fall into and what your current lens prescription is so that you know whether you need to focus on the internal lens or the external lens, so that we know the limiting beliefs that we hold. Once we start to recognize those stories that we're writing, we can begin evaluating and challenging them with those Socratic questions, those 5 questions that we talked about today. We understand now that we can't just stop having negative thoughts by telling ourselves not to have negative thoughts. We have to override them with different stories, with positive thoughts. And we can do that super easily starting in this moment with 3 tools that I've given you. First is we're going to get curious. We're going to ask the lesson that we can pull from every setback we experience. We're going to recognize and remind ourselves that every hardship we face is a form of progressive overload, challenging us to grow mentally and as people. And when we find that we're really struggling or we're writing those negative stories about ourselves, instead of stopping at the moment of discomfort, we're going to keep the plot moving with the word yet, just like the best improv comedians. If you make it a practice of doing these things, you can get your mindset lens clearer and clearer until you achieve perfect clarity, until you embrace whether you're a doubter, a striver, a reflector, you can move yourself to an achiever. And this will not make your goals easy, because I know we got big goals, but it will ensure that you're not holding yourself back because of some invisible force that we're ignoring. I like to use the phrase with mindset. Mindset will not make your life all sunshine and rainbows, but it will put more sunshine and rainbows in your life. So it's important that we address the lens that we're viewing the world through, because it will quietly dictate everything that follows.